All right, so we're back in Exodus. Today we're looking at chapters 17 and 18. Last time we were together, 15 and 16, we were looking at the manna, the quail, the Sabbath observance. And now we're on today to 17 is water from the rock, the battle with the Amalekites. And 18 is going to be the visit from Jethro and his counsel for Moses. So why don't we go ahead and jump in. We'll start with the water issue here. So we can read 17:1 to 7.
From the wilderness of Sin, the whole congregation of the Israelites journeyed by stages as the Lord commanded. They camped at Rephidim, but there was no water for the people to drink. The people quarreled with Moses and said, "Give us water to drink." Moses said to them, "Why do you quarrel with me? Why do you test the Lord?" But the people thirsted there for water, and the people complained against Moses and said, "Why did you bring us out of Egypt to kill us and our children and livestock with thirst?" So Moses cried out to the Lord, "What shall I do with this people? They are almost ready to stone me." The Lord said to Moses, "Go on ahead of the people and take some of the elders of Israel with you. Take in your hand the staff with which you struck the Nile, and go. I will be standing there in front of you on the rock at Horeb. Strike the rock, and water will come out of it, so that the people may drink." Moses did so in the sight of the elders of Israel. He called the place Massah and Meribah, because the Israelites quarreled and tested the Lord, saying, "Is the Lord among us or not?"
Okay. So if we put ourselves back in the scene here, or try to, we're still dealing with an Israel that's being led by a pillar of fire, pillar of cloud. Now they've got manna appearing magically on the ground, supernaturally on the ground every morning, except for the Sabbath. It disappears. It's all this stuff is going on that would make you think your God is with you, because he's literally with you like every day and every minute. You can see he's with you, but the people are quarreling. And that word quarreled as reeve. That's like a trial word. So this is a pretty serious thing. People literally want to have a trial with Moses here. And they ask for water. And we can understand they're getting thirsty, running out of water. They have lots of animals. They got their kids. They got everything. They need water. God knows that. They have food, obviously. They're getting their food pretty steady here. But it comes down to it. And, this is going to be a pretty serious confrontation here again. So God's going to say to Moses, "Go ahead, take with you some of the elders of Israel." And we could look at the elders word a bit, like what's an elder. Later on we're going to hear about judges. There's different groups and different leaders. This is probably more like tribal elders, clan elders, things like that. Some of the older men that are leading their clans, leadership that are respected by the people, which is an important thing. If they're about to stone him, he'd want to get the leaders together and say, "All right, let's go out and show the people what God has." He tells them to bring the staff. And if you remember this staff, the last time this staff was involved in water, it's been involved in water a couple of times now. First time, he struck the Nile with it, made the water undrinkable. Now we're going to have a contrast. He's going to strike a rock, which no water should come out of. But water is going to come out of that rock after being struck. So the staff is doing things. Now we have a contrast here. And the staff is really representing the authority of God, the authority and power. They kind of understood that. So Moses is going out there with the staff that they recognize. Remember, this is the staff that swallowed up the serpents. This thing has been used for many miracles. So the miracle man comes out here. He's about to do some water magic. And believe it or not, water magic is like a normal thing in the Bible. We see water magic all the time. For whatever reason, if you're a prophet of the Lord, you're going to do some water magic at some point. That's like a normal thing. So like Elijah does it. Even like Joshua is going to, they're going to part the sea or part the river. Elijah's going to do the same thing. Elisha is going to do the same thing. Make the water stop, make the water come. Water magic's like a normal thing. And Jesus even does his own form of water magic, right? He can walk on the water. He can make the calm seas. He can make water into the best wine. He does lots of water magic too. So this is kind of like a prophet thing. If you're a prophet of the Lord, you're going to have some water magic tricks in your repertoire at some point. So he goes out there with the elders, his staff. God tells him to walk amongst the people. I'm sure Moses was a little uncomfortable with that as they're threatening to stone, but he's got some backup here. He's got the staff. He's got the leadership. Tells him to go stand before, God says, I will stand before you there on the rock at Horeb. Horeb is another name for Sinai, right? And you will strike the rock, and water will come out of it. People may drink. Just fast forward here. We're going to have another water situation, but this time God is going to command Moses to not strike the rock, but speak to the rock. And Moses is going to be so upset with the people over this that he's going to forget and take the staff and strike the rock again. And this is going to be Moses' great sin. This is going to be Moses' great failure. God wanted to show the people a different thing. He wanted to show them that just by the word, speaking the word, God could bring forth water. But Moses is going to screw that up. And it's going to cost Moses the ability for him to go into the promised land. It's a fatal mistake. He doesn't obey God's voice. But here he does. He strikes the rock. He obeys God's voice, and water comes forth. And then they go ahead and name the place Massa and Meribah. So this is kind of quarreling and testing is they end up naming it.
Hey, John.
Mm-hmm.
I had a question. Could another reason why this be a fatal sin for him is because before it's like, hey, stretch forth your hand, strike the rock, everything like that, but essentially it's supposed to give God the glory and speak to Jesus in the future. So if he speaks to the rock and it produces water, just like Jesus spoke to the sea and calmed the sea, that would be probably one of the reasons why it would
Yeah, it's possible that God wanted to bring that out, and then later on that would be, the obvious connection. Sure, it's possible.
Another thing I noticed in those first 7 verses is that Moses is used 6 times in the third person. But then when Moses names the 2 places, there's a little bit of alliteration. Moses, Massa, and Meribah. Massa, did you tell us what that meant?
It means testing. Testing and quarreling here.
So is it similar to the quarreling of what the people did in verse 2, or a different kind of quarreling?
Yeah, it's the same word.
Same Hebrew word?
Actually, no. Quarreling there is reeve. So reeve is actually the word. That's trial. That's is bringing a case, actually. It's more of a court term. So Hebrew reeve. I've heard of a reeve pattern. That's prophets would bring reeve patterns, trials against the people, as they are the covenant enforcers of Yahweh. So.
And Meribah is, so Massa is testing, quarreling, Meribah is?
Quarreling.
Oh, so Massa is testing, Meribah is quarreling.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I thought that Massa had the first 2, but that's testing and quarreling. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
That's cool.
And, you could liken this to, this is like asking your wife as she's sitting in the kitchen cooking and working. It's like going up to her and saying, "Are we going to get some food around here?" And she's clearly making you food.
Ooh,
You can kind of liken it to that. So God's not happy with the way the people are asking for water, testing. Can you do this? Almost saying, prove it. Is the Lord among us or not? Prove it. Oh, the pillar didn't convince you? The manna you got this morning that's in your belly didn't convince you? The quail that you're going to get later that you had last night, that's not going to convince you? So there's so many things. I mean, it seems difficult, but put yourself in that position. You're a fleshly person, you have needs, you have children that are hungry, thirsty. Are you going to be frustrated?
Mm-hmm.
So they're learning to trust, and they don't really know at this point how to relate to Yahweh. They still come from a very pagan worldview. They don't quite yet know how to approach him, how to worship him, how to keep reverence and holiness. They're going to learn this. It's going to be like a progressive revelation. So they're coming along, but God is not happy with them here. All right, so let's move on here. We can read 8 to 16. This is the Amalekites here.
Then Amalek came and fought with Israel at Rephidim. Moses said to Joshua, "Choose some men for us and go out, fight with Amalek. Tomorrow I will stand on the top of the hill with the staff of God in my hand." So Joshua did as Moses told him and fought with Amalek, while Moses, Aaron, and Hur went up to the top of the hill. Whenever Moses held up his hand, Israel prevailed. And whenever he lowered his hand, Amalek prevailed. But Moses' hands grew weary. So they took a stone and put it under him, and he sat on it. Aaron and Hur held up his hands, one on one side and the other on the other side. So his hands were steady until the sun set. And Joshua defeated Amalek and his people with the sword. Then the Lord said to Moses, "Write this as a reminder in a book, and recite it in the hearing of Joshua. I will utterly blot out the remembrance of Amalek from under heaven." And Moses built an altar and called it, "The Lord is my banner." He said, "A hand upon the banner of the Lord will have a war with Amalek from generation to generation." And I just have something to say real quick. Mm-hmm. When I was at York River last summer, when I was in the membership process, one of the songs that they were singing over there, and they might sing, I think Melissa sang this one at the Hampton campus. "The Lord is the banner over, the banner over, the banner over me." I guess it's coming from that text, verse 15 or 14?
Yeah.
15 and 16, of Exodus 17.
Yeah, so the Lord is my banner. And, banners were used in those days during war, the flag. I mean, we still use the flag, we just don't use it the way that they would use it at those times. But, even up until, even think about the symbolism of the flag, the planting of flags, the raising of flags. Even today, it's still a very powerful image. But, think of the image of Iwo Jima, the raising of the flag on the island. It's a huge memorial. We all know that picture. We all know that monument. Our own Star Spangled Banner is about the flag being held up and remaining. At that time it was a rallying cry. To see the banner was to see that we still are fighting. We're still in the fight. If you see the banner retreating, then you follow the banner and retreat.
Here's another question. It says, I want to say in 14, they'll completely blot out the memory of the Amalek.
Mm-hmm.
But then the Amalekites, it says war against the Amalekites from generation to generation. So if it almost sounds like it's contradictory to each other, because if it's like completely blot out somebody, then you're not going to be warring with that person from generation to generation.
Yeah.
You pretty much completely killed them, so it's like you're not going to be warring with them anymore.
Yeah, so some of the descendants survive these battles. They're not getting everybody.
And it even makes you wonder, who are the Amalekites of the 21st century? Who are they out there? Are they still around?
In a spiritual sense, there's
utterly
definitely...
blotted out, physically yet.
Yeah. All right, so let's talk about... There's a few things here. First of all, we can kind of talk again about where is Sinai. Because they're near Sinai now. And the traditional place that Constantine's mom, Helena, decided was Sinai is way, way down in the tip of Sinai, in the wilderness, way down in the V of the Gulf of Aqaba and the Gulf of Suez there at the top of the Red Sea, very far away from where the Amalekites are, very far away from the Midianites, very far away from Egypt. It's a very remote area. But are there other options for Sinai other than Jebel Musa in the south? The answer is yes, there are lots of other options. So I think that the route is actually more eastern, maybe even northeastern, from where they left Egypt and crossed the Red Sea. The Amalekites, if you have the map of Canaan in your mind, you know where the Philistine territory is. You know where Jerusalem is, the Dead Sea next to it. So if you come south of there, you have Edom south of there, that region below the Dead Sea, the Edomites are there. And then toward the Philistines, right, to west of Edom, that's the Amalekite area, that region there. If you keep going further south of Edom, you're going to come into Midianite territory. So we're talking about all these neighbors there, Midianites, the Edomites, the Amalekites, and then north of there, the Philistines. So these are the groups that are there. So I would say we could probably, and there are some things that are pegged to Sinai, some areas that we do know, and they're in the area of Edom. So if Sinai is in that wilderness just below Edom, I think it makes sense, and it would make sense that the Amalekites would be there close enough to strike them or threatened. You know, why are the Amalekites attacking Israel? Like, what's the issue? Are they doing it for the plunder? Do they just want to plunder them? Did they see a huge nation of people wandering through their land and they're worried about water? Is it the history? Mm-hmm.
I know you're having a deep discussion on the Amalekites right now. I know Moses is from the tribe of Levi, which comes from Jacob, through Abraham, Shem, all that. Where does the Amalekites come from?
Right. So Amalek was a grandson of Esau.
So he's part of the lineage of Shem, through Noah, right?
Yeah. So they're distant relatives.
So they're relatives of from Esau and Jacob. So with that clash that Esau and Jacob had, where Esau originally, Jacob had restoration, eventually over the generations, there was a clash again between the children of Israel and Amalekites here in Exodus.
Yeah, so Esau's descendants go in different areas, have different nations that rise up. The Amalekites are, so he's the grandson of one of Esau's concubines.
Okay, that makes sense now.
And we're going to see, this history here. So obviously you have the original history of the betrayal of Esau by Jacob and the passing of the blessing. That caused animosity.
And one last thought. With Esau and Jacob, it was a choice by God conditionally of what person got the blessing. Because Esau and Jacob were both polygamous. So they both had multiple wives, meaning that with all the issues that come with multiple wives, eventually the Amalekites came from one of Esau's concubines. While we don't know everything about what came from Jacob's concubines, Zilpah and Bilhah, but we do know that one of Jacob's sons was with one of his
Jacob
concubines.
has 4 wives, and the 12 sons come. We don't know how many daughters come, but can assume a lot.
But as you said, the Amalekites coming from one of the concubines of Esau's descendants, just as Bilhah was one of the concubines of Jacob, and she sinned with one of Jacob's sons from Leah. That I still think there's some issues with the polygamy of both of the boys, the twins. It's just that God's conditional blessing on Jacob went through Moses, while the Amalekites had that, in a sense, curse that came through Esau's concubines.
Okay. So
I know it's kind of deep.
Let's talk about the whole issue of polygamy.
Okay.
So God calls Abraham. Abraham is in a patriarchal society. Polygamy, the practice of having multiple wives at that time,
Was acceptable.
It's part of their culture. It's actually a way to help women to have children.
To gain status in society.
To have support. Because if a woman, maybe she doesn't have a lot of money or wealth, she can't be a full proper wife, but she can be a non-inheriting wife, which is a concubine. It's a wife that doesn't have a marriage contract. So she could be a concubine, and then through her children, especially her sons, she has protection, right? Because mama's boy is going to take care of mama. That's the idea. And so she'll always be provided for. The most vulnerable people in society at that time are widows.
Right.
That don't have anybody because they can't provide for themselves. They can't protect themselves. What's the option? Oh, just you're on your own in the desert here. No,
Right.
It's not a good option. So a lot of times men would take a wife, concubine, and in Israel, we're going to see it's actually commanded. If your brother dies and his wife does not have a heir, your job is to marry her, raise up an heir, so that the name will continue. Also, that your land and your property doesn't fall into the hands of a swindler
Right.
or a stranger. So you want to protect the family by keeping your brother's wife in the family with the children. So you protect that land. You don't want to lose that property. So God works with the cultures he comes into. He's not trying to say, okay, here's the rules. All the stuff you've been doing for this last few centuries, we're going to change all that right now. That's not how he's doing things. And so he's working with them as they are. Yes, I do think that the ideal for marriage is one man, one woman. And we see, through Genesis, you see the problems of multiple marriage. You see the fighting, you see the anger, you see the jealousy. You see the problems that it causes in all of these marriages where you have multiple women involved. We see the situation with Sarah and Hagar. We see.
So going back to this concept of monogamy, Genesis 2:24 says, "Therefore a man leaves his father and his mother and clings to his wife, and they become one flesh." Would you have to say that is unconditional if there was conditions where polygamy was an acceptable practice in Middle Eastern culture of the Genesis, time period?
Yeah, so I think
and Exodus and beyond.
Yeah, so I think that account in Genesis, which is probably written during the life of Moses or shortly after it, shows God's ideal for marriage, for the family. And, certainly over time, the church has agreed that is the gold standard and what God wants. One flesh union between male and female. That's what he wants. However, I think there are exceptions that we do see, even in modern times.
Sure. Yeah.
Because of war.
Right.
When war happens, all the men get wiped out.
Yep.
Now you have all these women running around saying, I have no protection, I have no children, I need a husband. So for a time, in certain countries, the church decided that we could have a man take multiple women as wives for a generation until there were enough men to get the balance back. And that has happened in Africa.
And think even of Middle Eastern with our Islam and with the Mormons of Utah and all over the U.S. that, not the U.S. all over, but LSD, Church of Latter-day Saints, they do, or LDS, they believe polygamy is still a very practical and
The official church, no.
option, right?
The official church, no.
No,
The
the official
LDS church, no.
Yeah.
They
Okay.
reject polygamy.
Sorry.
But there are still groups from the Mormon sect that believe that it's mandated by God and it's part of their theology. But you have to take multiple wives. There's reasons why they do it. And I think they're wrong.
But digressing back to the Amalekites. The Amalekites, as Andrew was talking about, something happened where,
There's a lot of
eventually
history.
Moses, putting his hands up, Israel prevails, putting his hands down, Amalekites prevail. But then once Joshua defeats Amalek in verse 13, even though the defeat seems to be final at that point in time, God's not thinks that that's not enough. Make this a reminder that Amalek's descendants, generation to generation, we're going to have a war with them.
Yeah, and there's going to be problems, and there's going to be disobedience. So Saul is going to be called to enact a harem slaughter. Harem means utterly destroy. It's a special kind of war. It's a God war.
What was that term again?
Harem, in Hebrew, harem.
Harem. That term, yeah. Okay.
Yeah, it's chet, resh, mem, harem.
Harem in Hebrew, yeah.
So he's going to ask Saul to enact a harem slaughter against Agag and the Amalekites. Yeah. And Saul is going to not follow through on that. And this is going to be the downfall of Saul. Right? Samuel's going to come to him and say, what is this that you've done? And Saul's going to make excuses, but ultimately he's going to keep the best of the sheep. He's going to keep the best of the things, and he's going to keep the king alive. And this is going to basically be it for him. So, and then we're going to see again, all the way up until, believe it or not, in Persia, we're going to see Mordecai and Haman are going to go head to head. Haman is an Agagite, right? So Haman is like one of the final descendants of these Amalekites from Agag's line that's going to be trying to kill the Jews still. So there's going to be all this history throughout Israel's history, all the way into Persia. So just a little word on the whole harem war here. So this is a God war. This is a big issue for people because they don't like this, that when God calls Joshua to go into the land, he's basically cleansing the land. There is a particular target here, and this is something that a lot of churches miss, a lot of people miss. There is a concept in Scripture that begins in Genesis 6. We see it again in 11. We have an event happen where the sons of God transgress. They leave their first estate in heaven. They come down to earth. They can clearly take human form. They can even procreate with humans. And I know there are other views. But assuming that that view is correct and that they give birth to hybrid giants, what the Bible calls Nephilim, which basically brings about the flood. God has to wipe them out because everything is so corrupted. But if you study this out, you're going to see that the sons of God, the B'nai Elohim, that leave God's counsel, that rebel against him, that disobey, right? Serpent in the garden, all these beings that get together and decide that they want to do what they want to do, and they want to use their free will to do what they think is right. And they begin to rule the nations. We know Deuteronomy 32 says that God divided the nations according to the number of the sons of God. He expected them to rule and reign with his authority and his goodness, but they began to accept the worship and perverted worship to the point where we have the Canaanite religions, all the religions of the world, all these pagan ideas pop up throughout the world because these gods, these divine beings that God gave the nations, they failed. And we know from Psalm 86 that they did fail and that they will be judged someday for it. And anyhow, when we go to the holy war situation, we're dealing with usually the giant clans is the main target. And we could talk about it for a long time. And if you want more information on this, you can look up like Michael Heiser's videos.
What's the last name spelled?
Heiser.
Heiser.
Yeah, Michael Heiser, Dr. Michael Heiser. He has a lot on this.
About the Genesis 6 implications of throughout the rest of the
Just look him up. Divine Council Worldview, his Exodus commentary. You can hear about all this, but we're dealing with giant clans and the remnants of giant clans that are still around. And this is going to be a problem all through Israel's history up until the time of David and his men. They're going to finish off the giants. They're going to take out Goliath and his brothers, which are leftover giants that get absorbed into the Philistine communities. But that's what they're doing. That's what Joshua is doing. When they go into the land, they're purging these giant clans, the remnants of the offspring of these divine beings. I know it seems weird because a lot of churches don't talk about it or cover it, but That's what's going on here. And that's why you have all these giants. And when the people go to spy out the land and they come back and they say there's giants in the land, they mean it. There's giants in the land. There's people that are hybrids, that are super strong, that are like almost like half gods. And they're afraid for a good reason. But God is going to use them to wipe them out. And he does eventually. But there's a lot of disobedience along the way.
Yeah.
So that's what's happening here. The Amalekites do have connections to these clans. And so God does show that he is in control, that he's a part of this war. So this really is not about the strength of Joshua and his men, right? Because it's Moses holding up the staff, which shows the authority and power of God, that gives them the power and the ability here. So Aaron and Hur, the first time we see Hur mentioned here.
Hur is, how is he connected to Moses and Joshua? Hur from verses 10.
So we really don't know. So Hur, like Josephus says that he was the husband of Miriam. So that's kind of that's kind of
brother-in-law.
That's kind of the church tradition, or Jewish tradition on it. He's probably a chief elder, is what he really is. He may have been the grandfather of the supervising craftsman of the tabernacle. So there's a chance. But Hur, I guess, was a common name. So even though Aholiab was, the son of Hur, might not have been him specifically.
And there was like no mention in the Bible of like him dying, like in the Chronicles.
Yeah, there's not a lot of information about him, but needless to say, he's definitely a leader, a chief elder for sure. That's what it seems here. Somebody comparable to like an Aaron, a leader. So you can get the scene. Moses is getting tired, so they probably put Moses on like a rock somewhere low, and the guys can easily hold up his hands. And they end up, being able to defeat them. Verse 14, it says, "Write this in a book as a memorial and recite it to Joshua." This is the first instance here where Moses is told to write something down. And it kind of foreshadows that Joshua is going to succeed Moses. So, and this command here to utterly blot out the Amalekites, this is going to be completed and followed through by Joshua, by Saul and David, and they're going to continue this battle. All right, so let's push on here. Why don't we go ahead and read 18. Let's break it up into two chunks. So let's read 18, 1 to 16.
Jethro, the priest of Midian, Moses' father-in-law, heard of all that God had done for Moses and for his people Israel, how the Lord had brought Israel out of Egypt. After Moses had sent away his wife Zipporah, his father-in-law Jethro took her back along with her 2 sons. The name of the one was Gershom, for he said, "I have been an alien in a foreign land." And the name of the other son, Eliezer, for he said, "The God of my father was my help and delivered me from the sword of Pharaoh." Jethro, Moses' father-in-law, came into the wilderness where Moses was encamped at the mountain of God, bringing Moses' sons and wife to him. He sent word to Moses, "I, your father-in-law, Jethro, am coming to you with your wife and her 2 sons." Moses went out to meet his father-in-law. He bowed down and kissed him. Each asked after the other's welfare, and they went into the tent. Then Moses told his father-in-law all that the Lord had done to Pharaoh and to the Egyptians for Israel's sake, all the hardship that had beset them on the way, and how the Lord had delivered them. Jethro rejoiced for all the good that the Lord had done to Israel in delivering them from the Egyptians. Jethro said, "Blessed be the Lord, who has delivered you from the Egyptians and from Pharaoh. Now I know that the Lord is greater than all gods, because he delivered the people from the Egyptians when they dealt arrogantly with them." And Jethro, Moses' father-in-law, brought a burnt offering and sacrifices to God, and Aaron came with all the elders of Israel to eat bread with Moses' father-in-law in the presence of God.
Okay, so let's stop there, actually. All right, so Jethro's back on the scene here.
He is originally there when Moses first got married to Zipporah before he returned to the land of Egypt.
And Jethro is a bit of a frame here for the book of Exodus, because Moses' journey to deliver Israel kind of begins with him. He goes to his father-in-law after receiving the command, and he says, God has given me this mission. Is it okay if I go in peace, take my wife and kids and go? And Jethro says, yes, go, do this thing. I'll see you again, kind of thing. Now we're back. Moses comes back with all the people. And Jethro shows up with Moses' wife and kids. So at some point, Zipporah and the kids leave Moses. And we don't know, like, did it happen when they had the whole circumcision situation?
No.
Right? When they go there, you know, the situation happens with Zipporah where she has to perform the circumcision and actually saves the life of Moses. Does this freak them out so much that she says, you know, I'm going to take the kids and go back?
So there wasn't like a Midianite doctor. There was Zipporah did the circumcision herself with her own kids?
She is the daughter of the Midianite priest, so she probably knows about circumcision. The Midianites were circumcisers. She knows what to do, and she knows how to perform the ritual and say the words. Anyway, so one theory is she leaves then and goes back, and then Moses goes and meets Aaron at Sinai, and then goes back with Aaron. That's one theory. The other theory is she stays with Moses through the whole thing, sees all the things that God does in Egypt, all the deliverance brought through the sea, all the provision in the wilderness, and then when they get to, and like I said, I believe it's a northern route, not a southern route. So I think she went for a family visit. When they got near to Midian, she went home with the kids. This whole battle happens with the Amalekites. She goes home maybe before that because they're close by. She can easily go home. And then she tells her father-in-law, she tells her father about all that God had done. Because her father knows about all that God had done. So where did he hear it from? Did he hear it from traveling people that were traveling through? Did he hear it from his daughter? I don't know. There's also a question here about whether or not Moses divorced Zipporah and sent her home at some point because he comes back with them. So that there is some debate and discussion here about this. Was it a divorce? Was it a family visit? If it was a family visit, when did it happen? Before Egypt or after the Exodus? There are some discussions about Moses taking a second wife, a Nubian, a Cushite. I've seen some good arguments that might be referring to Zipporah as well. That it might not be referring to, even though she's a Midianite, maybe she's dark and skin tone. It's possible that Moses only had one wife.
And Moses was not introduced to any of the Egyptian women as potential mates before he left Egypt to go to Midian?
Yeah, I mean, there's
like Zipporah was considered his first wife by many scholars?
That's a good question too. Did Moses have a wife before he ran away? Doesn't talk about it. The Bible's quiet about it.
Yeah, it is, yeah.
And even the Cushite woman that Miriam doesn't like and ends up leprous for it, coming against her. Again, we don't hear anything further about it. We don't hear anything about Moses having multiple wives. So,
but there is evidence that Moses had another wife besides Zipporah? Or do you think Zipporah was his only
Well,
spouse?
there's the one reference in 18 about the Cushite woman.
The Cushite woman, yeah.
So is Zipporah the Cushite? Is what
right, that's the question.
Is the argument. If not, then yeah, he had another wife. But if it's her, then no. She's the only one. Zipporah kind of gets a bad rap because of the way that whole circumcision scene goes down. We tend to look at it and see it as a negative thing, but a lot of people look at that and say, no, she actually did the right thing. She knew what she was doing. She didn't throw it at his feet in anger or disgust. She performed a ritual. She doesn't actually throw it at his feet. She touches it to his genitals. performing the ritual. All right, so there are some other issues here we can talk about. Jethro, so Moses' first encounter with Zipporah's father, his name is Reuel, is how he gets introduced in 2:18. This could just be a clan name, like a last name, and Jethro could be like the name that he goes by, like his first name. That's possible. Another possibility is that the word father-in-law could refer to more than just father-in-law. It could be any male relative through marriage. So it could be a brother-in-law, father-in-law, an uncle. So maybe Reuel was her father, and maybe he died. And so maybe Jethro is the next in line to be the father and leader of the household. Maybe her uncle, or maybe her brother. That's another possibility as well. But there is that kind of strange, why are we first talking about Reuel, now Jethro's mentioned a bunch of times. So those are some issues there. We see a contrast here between 17 and 18. 17 we have...
Now, would this be like the second time? Not the second time. I know there's other father-in-laws in Genesis, but we know about the father-in-law connection of Laban to Jacob. And we know that, but they were still kind of related. Laban was like an uncle too, right? Do you think Jethro was more than just a father-in-law? As you were saying, any male relative through marriage, do you think?
There's a question as to whether or not this term could mean that.
As a part of the family?
Could be taken that way. To mean more than just my technical father-in-law, the man who conceived the woman I'm married to. Maybe it means more than that.
Yeah.
So, there's some issues there, but
Jethro was the Midian priest.
But Reuel is called the Midianite priest as well in 2:18. So we could, like I said, we could be talking about the same person. I tend to think that's what we're talking about, the same person. I think that Jethro is the father-in-law who does stay alive all this time. But, that's another issue to consider too, is the time. Like, how old is this guy? If Moses truly is 80 years old, how old is his father-in-law? 100? 110? There's some issues there, for sure. So, like I said, there's a contrast here between 17 and 18. So we have confrontation in 17. We have collegiality in 18 from a foreign nation. Right? So we have the Midianite priest. We have collegiality with him. The Amalekites, we have confrontation. So I again think this is a reason why Sinai is close to Midian. Jethro is coming in. Now, some people would say this is Jethro's conversion. There is a view, it's called the Kenite hypothesis, that Jethro is a priest of the Most High God, similar to Melchizedek. But it seems from this story that Jethro understands from the report of the Israelites coming out of Egypt that Yahweh is the God of gods. He makes this statement here. And like we read it here in 18:11, Jethro says, "Now I know that Yahweh is greater than all the gods. Indeed, it was proven when they dealt proudly against the people." And then Jethro takes a burnt offering, sacrifices for God. And Aaron is there with all the elders of Israel to eat a meal. This is covenant language here with Moses' father-in-law before God. So this is a covenant meal for sure. Is Jethro here making a confession of faith in Yahweh and making a covenant with him here, with the elders of Israel, with Moses, eating this meal? It's Jethro that's initiating the sacrifices here, bringing the burnt offerings. Some would say, yes, this is Jethro's conversion. He's now a Yahwist. Some interesting things here we're going to see. All right, I think we should push forward here. Let's read 13 to 27. Finish it up.
The next day Moses sat as judge for the people, while the people stood around him from morning until evening. When Moses, his father-in-law, saw all that he was doing for the people, he said, "What is this that you are doing for the people? Why do you sit alone, while all the people stand around you from morning until evening?" Moses said to his father-in-law, "Because the people come to me to inquire of God. When they have a dispute, they come to me, and I decide between one person and another, and I make known to them the statutes and instructions of God." Moses' father-in-law said to him, "What you are doing is not good. You will surely wear yourself out, both you and these people with you, for the task is too heavy for you. You cannot do it alone. Now listen to me. I will give you counsel, and God be with you. You should represent the people before God, and you should bring their cases before God. Teach them the statutes and instructions, and make known to them the way they are to go and the things they are to do. You should also look for able men among all the people, men who fear God, are trustworthy, and hate dishonest gain. Set such people over them as officers over thousands, hundreds, fifties, and tens. Let them sit as judges for the people at all times. Let them bring every important case to you, but decide every minor case themselves. So it will be easier for you, and they will bear the burden with you. If you do this and God so commands you, then you will be able to endure, and all these people will go to their home in peace." So Moses listened to his father-in-law and did all that he had said. Moses chose able men from all Israel and appointed them as heads over the people, as officers over thousands, hundreds, fifties, and tens. And they judged the people at all times. Hard cases they brought to Moses, but any minor case they decided themselves. Then Moses let his father-in-law depart, and he went off to his own country.
All right.
So that right there, just reading that makes me think Jethro may have had a divine mandate from Yahweh to be, counseling Moses in that kind of way.
And I think this shows the reliability of the tradition and its antiquity. That the early Israelite judiciary is ascribed to the initiative and advice of a Midianite priest. Given their relationship later on is not going to be very good between Midian and Israel. So this kind of speaks to that Moses is taking advice from a foreigner here, even though God is leading him. And we see the teachability of Moses here. This is a good quality in Moses, that he's able to see as a leader and hear wisdom from his father. We can definitely learn a lot from this. Definitely see the need to delegate sometimes and divide responsibility for the sake of everyone. Because you don't want to be burned out. You can't do everything all the time. You can't control everything. It's going to limit you. And it's also going to frustrate other people.
I can't say I've fully learned this one, but if you look at most structures in most companies and everything, by delegating, you do two things. One, you free yourself up, but also two, you trust other people, so therefore they feel like they're more valuable.
Yep.
So it's a win-win, because you're showing them that the fact that I trust you over this, like the tens, fifties, hundreds, and thousands. And I know that you can handle this. And then two, it frees you up to take on the quote-unquote harder
Yeah.
thing.
You know what that made me think of?
What?
How the preaching takes place at Liberty, since we're part of Liberty Church as members. Pastor Grant preaches from the Hampton campus, but it apparently is live streamed to these other 6 or 7 campuses, right?
Yeah.
And where does the delegating go when it comes to pastors at those churches, when they can speak and when Pastor Grant has the authority?
Yeah.
So that's an issue right there that would be
And
considered a delegating
Pastor
issue.
Grant's not going to be around forever.
Of course not. So they're going to eventually have some kind of
Yeah.
individuals that will be taking up that leadership in the preaching ministry.
So they're using their skills and abilities and talents and, going out in that. So there's a lot we can learn here. I'll say a few things before we close. We're going to have the 10 commands. The Decalogue is going to come in 20, right? Decalogue, Decalogos means 10 words. We call them the 10 commandments. But it's interesting that in this passage, we're going to have devar, which is the word thing.
What was that word again?
Devar.
How do you spell that in Hebrew?
Dalet, Beit, Resh.
It's 3 letters. Yeah.
Devar, Devarim.
It's 3 letters, but there's 2 verbs that we as English people put into it, correct? With the consonants to make it a word.
Yeah, I mean, you could translate that word, matter, or thing. So we're going to see it 10 times in this little passage here. It's going to be interesting. It's going to kind of foreshadow the 10 words that are going to come, the 10 commandments. So whenever you see this word here, like 14, you see, what is this thing? That's devar. 16, when they have a dispute, that's devar. You could translate it matter. 17, the thing that you are doing, that's devar. Again, bring up the disputes to God. 19, 22, let every major dispute, but every minor dispute, this is all devar. If you do this thing that God, 23, devar. And 10 times, basically, you see it.
Yeah.
So it's kind of interesting that we have 10 words here, then we're going to have the 10 words there. It's a little literary foreshadowing there.
Nice.
I think one of the parallels we can look at here that's interesting for biblical theology is the parallel between Jethro and Melchizedek here.
Yeah.
So in both instances, we have a non-Israelite priest. After a battle, they make a covenant meal with God's chosen prophet, Abraham, in the case of Melchizedek, Moses and the elders of Israel in the case of the Exodus. They both offer blessing and then followed by, a covenant of Yahweh. Interesting parallel there, for sure. Genesis 14 and Exodus 18. All right. I think maybe one last comment here. The word peace in Exodus. It's 3 times mentioned. It's always in the mouth of Jethro throughout the book here.
Well,
and verse 27, actually we didn't read that. So Moses chose able men out of all of Israel and made them heads over the people, leaders of thousands, of hundreds, of fifties, and tens. They judged the people at all times. The difficult dispute, it's devar, they would bring to Moses, but every minor dispute they themselves would judge. Then Moses bade his father-in-law farewell, and he went his way into his own land.
do you think also some of this counsel that Jethro is giving Moses is not just because he's his father-in-law, but do you think it has something to do with the implication that Moses killed a man and he left Egypt to go to Midian, and that's where he met Jethro? May have been one of the first men he saw after that killing took place. Do you think Jethro from that point was a confidant to Moses, and hey, this doesn't need to be spilled out to everybody unless I'm sure some of the Egyptians found out about it, but Jethro may have been that counselor from that point when at some point Moses may not have revealed it immediately, but by the time there was whatever the premarital counseling may have been for Zipporah to be released from Jethro to become Moses' husband, that something may have been said.
Yeah.
That's why I'm just curious.
We don't know what Moses told Jethro and his wife about why he left Egypt. We don't know. I mean, I'm sure over the course of so many years, maybe Moses shared those details. Certainly God tells Moses, you don't need to worry about that anymore.
Right.
When it's time to go back, he says, the people that were seeking your life are no longer around.
Yeah.
That's dealt with. But it is something to keep in mind, when you do look at the life of Moses. Moses started off as a man who thought that he could lead his people by violence and realized that that wasn't God's plan. He had to learn to trust and watch God deliver his way. And so many times, I think that's a lesson we can make in our own life. So many times we think that we need to take control and do something when really we should be looking to God to deliver us or help us. We should look to prayer sometimes to solve problems rather than violence or sin to try to solve a problem. I think that's a good lesson that gets played out in Exodus many, many, many times. It's God that does the deliverance. He gives the word, and the people are to just take their stand and watch and wait for him.
And I think the other thing is we can learn through this is through, godly counsel. Because, yes, God does speak to us, but sometimes he uses other people, priests and godly people in our lives to speak life into us. And it's one thing that Jethro did to Moses. He says, hey, what you're doing is not a good thing.
Yeah. Yeah, and we do see also here the integration of the nations starting to come into the picture here. It's another theme here. The Midianites, the Israelites, and eventually God's plan, we know, for humanity is to bring back the nations. He divorced them and disinherited them at Babel, but ultimately that's going to be undone.
Right.
We're going to see in Pentecost the beginning of that process as the people come to faith in Christ and they go back to their nations, begin to spread the word that way. That's the mission of the church. That's the Great Commission, is to go into all the nations, making disciples, teaching them to be obedient to his word. So anyway, let's stop there for today. So we're going to finish up Exodus next time we meet. We're going to do 19 and 20. So we're going to end with the Decalogue. And
You're not doing chapters 21 to 40?
No, we're not going to study that in detail. We're going to move on to the New Testament and pick up in Mark in a couple weeks here.